She left home to visit a friend, but was never seen again. And the strangest part? No one really remembers who saw her last. On December 27th, 2010, in a quiet West Texas town where the winter sky hung frozen behind rows of low rooftops, 13-year-old Hailey Dunn stepped out of her mother's house and vanished. There was no chaos, no screams. No surveillance camera ever caught her leaving the neighborhood. They said she was headed to a friend's house for a sleepover, but no one could confirm she ever arrived. At first, police believed she might have just run away. But if that were true, why were her phone, her shoes, and even her pajamas still sitting in her bedroom? Her mother's boyfriend, the man living in the house at the time, claimed to be the last person to see her. But that statement would soon come under serious doubt. And then, Texas was hit with one of its coldest winters in years. As Hailey's phone stayed dark and her bedroom still held the faint scent of baby shampoo, fear began to creep into every corner of town. 3 months later, an anonymous call led investigators to a windswept field out west. And what they found, no one was prepared to see. Hailey Dunn was born in 1997, the daughter of Billie Jean and Clint Dunn. She lived with her mother and her mother's boyfriend, Sean Adkins, in a small town called Colorado City. The kind of place where most folks know each other's names, but nobody really knows what goes on behind closed doors. Hailey was in 8th grade at the local middle school. She was a cheerleader, the kind of kid people called a happy girl, with bright eyes and a smile that could melt tension in any room. But like many kids growing up in rural Texas, life wasn't always easy. Her parents were divorced. Her mother worked long hours just to keep things afloat. And Sean, the man living in the house, was quiet, unreadable, and not everyone in the neighborhood felt entirely comfortable around him. Hailey loved music. She kept a diary. In one of her school essays, she wrote, "My dream is to be a teacher and help kids feel like they matter." To those who knew her, the idea that Hailey would just leave without telling anyone, especially at night, made no sense at all. At the time, Colorado City was deep into winter break. Schools were closed. The streets were quieter than usual. A small, peaceful town, but peaceful in a way that meant if a child vanished in the night, it might take hours before anyone even noticed. According to her mother, Billie Jean, Hailey left home around 3 p.m. to spend the night at a friend's house. But when police followed up, the story didn't line up. No one could confirm she ever arrived. And the strangest part? Hours passed before anyone called the police. No one called Hailey's phone. No one checked in. In the days that followed, Hailey's family appeared on local television, pleading for help. But viewers, especially those paying close attention, noticed something off. Sean Adkins, the boyfriend, appeared in every interview, yet his tone, his body language, didn't match the urgency of a grieving household. Even the way he described the last time he saw Hailey felt wrong. Too calm, too precise, like a story rehearsed one too many times. And then came a detail even Hailey's mother hadn't known. Something the 13-year-old had confided to a friend. She didn't want to go home for the holidays, because something about being there scared her. December 27th, 2010. Winter in Texas doesn't always bring snow, but the wind was sharp that day, and the air felt drier than usual, like something was missing. Around 3 p.m., according to her mother, Hailey said she was heading to a friend's house, a classmate named Mary, for a sleepover. It was a normal thing to do over winter break. Nothing about it seemed unusual. But when night fell, Hailey didn't call. She hadn't taken a sleeping bag. No toothbrush. No change of clothes. No backpack had left the house with her. It wasn't until the following morning, nearly 12 hours after Hailey was last seen, that her mother, Billie Jean, called the police to report her missing. When officers arrived, they started with the basics. Where was Hailey going? Who was she with? What was she wearing? But from the very beginning, the answers didn't add up. The friend Hailey was supposed to stay with, Mary, said she hadn't been told Hailey was coming over, and she never saw her that day. No one else saw Hailey leave the house. There were no security cameras in the neighborhood, and no neighbors had noticed a thing. And when police asked what Hailey had taken with her, they learned something that didn't sit right. Her phone was still at home. Inside Hailey's bedroom, everything looked untouched. Her bed was made. Her stuffed pillow still in place. There were no signs she had packed anything. A hoodie, the one she always wore at night, hung neatly on the bedpost. The first person investigators focused on wasn't a stranger. It was someone inside the house. Sean Adkins, her mother's boyfriend, claimed to be the last person who saw her. He said Hailey left around 3 p.m., acting normal, but he couldn't remember what she was wearing, couldn't say which direction she went. But by the next day, December 28th, police had already found inconsistencies. Phone data and follow-up questions revealed that Sean had actually left the house earlier that afternoon, before Hailey was even said to have left, which raised a chilling question. Was there ever any proof Hailey walked out that door? Within 48 hours of the missing person report, the Colorado City Police had brought in the FBI and state intelligence agencies. News outlets picked up the story. Local papers called it the most serious child disappearance the area had seen in a decade. But the deeper investigators dug, the murkier things became. Hailey's phone showed no activity prior to the 27th. Her social media had no posts, no goodbyes, no final story. Security footage from nearby businesses, including a gas station just down the road, showed no trace of her. Meanwhile, Sean Adkins, the man living in the home, appeared in interview after interview. He kept saying he didn't know what happened, but his tone stayed eerily calm, even detached. In one interview, a reporter asked, "What makes you think Hailey is still alive?" Sean replied, "I'm not sure she is." That sentence sent chills through living rooms across Texas. Billie Jean, Hailey's mother, sometimes sobbed on television. Other times, she interrupted investigators, urging them to focus on finding the real threat out there and to stop harassing Sean. But people started digging into the past. Sean's employment record showed he had claimed to be at work on December 27th, but his company confirmed he'd left that morning and never came back. Inside the home, police found storage devices, USBs, and hard drives containing dozens of disturbing files, violent content, torture-themed material, and bizarre magazines with titles like The Kidnapper in the Dark. Still, Sean wasn't arrested. There was no direct evidence tying him to a crime. While investigators wrestled with conflicting statements, the community stepped up. Volunteers spread out across the edge of Texas, through dry fields, abandoned barns, and dirt trails where children once played. They searched for anything, a single shoe, a journal, any sign at all. Days passed, then a week, then 2. But Hailey never came home. No clues, no sightings, as if she had vanished into thin air. Everyone was searching for a missing girl. But one question hung in the back of everyone's mind. What if she never left that house at all? Police often say, the truth lives in the little details. But in the case of Hailey Dunn, it was those little details that kept contradicting each other, like someone was slowly erasing a town's memory. Sean Adkins, Hailey's mother's boyfriend, insisted he left the house for work on the morning of December 27th, then came home in the early afternoon and saw Hailey still there. He claimed she left shortly after to go to her friends. But GPS data from his company phone told a different story. That afternoon, Sean wasn't in Colorado City. He was near Big Spring, over 30 miles away. He had no clear reason to be there. No one knew what he was doing. When asked, Sean said he was just driving around thinking, but no one believed that. Meanwhile, Hailey's mother, Billie Jean, told police she had taken a nap and wasn't sure exactly when her daughter left. A neighbor across the street, Mrs. Carla, said she never saw Hailey leave the house that day. "I usually see her," she said. "She skips out the front door like she's going on an adventure. But that day, nothing." And something even stranger. A security camera at an auto shop down the street should have caught Hailey walking by if she went the way Sean described. But there's no footage from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. At first, police thought the camera malfunctioned, until a technician confirmed the power cable had been pulled. Who did that? As search teams expanded their efforts north of town, they found a garbage bag dumped in a vacant lot. Inside was a child's pillow, a Disney princess print, just like the bedding Hailey had. But DNA testing came back inconclusive. The case was sliding into a fog of maybes. And as police tried to reconstruct a timeline, one major problem kept surfacing. No one, other than Sean, had actually seen Hailey alive in at least 24 hours before she was reported missing. In missing person cases, investigators always try to identify the last confirmed sighting. But in Colorado City, that picture wasn't just blurry, it was deliberately distorted. Dale, a military veteran turned volunteer searcher, once shared a moment that stayed with him. "We knocked on the door and asked for an item with Hailey's scent. Something for the search dogs," he said. It took nearly 3 hours for someone to bring out a shirt, and it had been freshly washed, no scent, completely useless. Hailey's biological father, Clint Dunn, lived in another town. But when he heard the news, he drove hundreds of miles immediately. "I don't understand why they didn't call me right away," he told reporters. "That's my daughter." Clint was also the first to question why police hadn't brought Sean Adkins in for formal questioning. "I'm not accusing anyone," he said, "but if your daughter goes missing and there's a man in the house giving conflicting stories, that man should have been detained day one." But Sean remained free, and Billie Jean kept defending him. The community started to split. Some blamed Hailey's mother. Others accused police of covering something up. Online forums exploded with rumors that Hailey had been emotionally abused, that she had told friends she didn't want to be home for Christmas. One classmate, who asked to remain anonymous, said Hailey once scribbled a message on a scrap of paper. "I wish I could disappear, but not like this." In a local news interview, just 1 week after Hailey vanished, a reporter asked Billie Jean where she thought her daughter might be. She replied, "I don't know. I think she'll just come home." That sentence, said just 7 days after a child went missing, sparked outrage. A week? A missing 13-year-old? And her mother sounded like she was talking about a teenage tantrum? Police still had no hard evidence. No body. No eyewitnesses. No security footage. But someone knew what happened. And that truth stayed buried for years. Until, 3 months later, a woman walking her dog stopped along a dirt road in West Texas. She saw something sticking out of the brush, something that made an entire town hold its breath. March 16th, 2013, nearly 3 years after Hailey Dunn vanished, a woman walking her dog down a remote dirt road in Scurry County, Texas, about 20 miles northwest of Colorado City, stopped when her dog began barking furiously, lunging into a patch of low brush. She tugged the leash, thinking the dog had found the remains of an animal. But as she stepped closer, she saw a torn piece of fabric, faint, weathered, caught on a thorny branch. And just beneath the dry surface of the soil, something was sticking out. She called 911. Police arrived, cordoned off the area, and began to dig carefully through layers of parched Texas dirt. It didn't take long before they confirmed it. It was human remains, badly decomposed. All that was left was mostly bone. A week later, DNA results confirmed the truth. It was Hailey Dunn. She had been found in a location that, chillingly, law enforcement had passed by before, but they never searched it thoroughly. The mystery was no longer where Hailey was. She wasn't alive. And now the question had changed. Who left her there like that? The site where Hailey was found raised even more suspicions. It was near a narrow back road known only to locals. No houses nearby, no lights, no cameras. The kind of place someone could use if they never wanted her to be found. Suddenly, pressure shifted back to law enforcement. 3 years, no body, no arrests. Now the community wanted answers, and they wanted justice. Across Texas, news stations replayed Hailey's photo, but this time it wasn't on a missing poster. It read, "Justice for Hailey." But then, a strange detail. When Hailey's body was recovered, the family wasn't the first to be notified. The media knew before they did, and almost immediately, a familiar name was back in the spotlight. A man who had been questioned, and then left alone. Now, once again, he was under a cloud of suspicion. As soon as Hailey's identity was confirmed, authorities reopened the case. From the beginning, they pulled every file, every transcript, every conflicting timeline. And one name appeared over and over in the very first reports: Sean Adkins, the man who lived in the house, the man who claimed to be the last person to see Hailey, the man whose alibi had never held up, and the man police had allowed to walk free for over a decade. In early 2021, nearly 11 years after Hailey disappeared, Sean Adkins was officially arrested and charged with murder. The community erupted. Online forums lit up. People posted the old theories, the cut power to the camera, the timeline gaps, the emotionless interviews. Hailey's father, Clint, told reporters, "I said it from day one. I looked into his eyes, and I knew something wasn't right." But even in custody, Sean didn't talk. No confession. No new clues. Just silence. And then, the unthinkable happened. In June 2023, all charges against Sean Adkins were dropped. Prosecutors said they needed further investigation before proceeding. and admitted there was no physical evidence directly linking Sean to Hailey's death. He was released, and this time, he vanished from public view completely. Public opinion split sharply. Some were outraged. They believed Sean was guilty and that his release was a failure of the justice system. But others, including some independent journalists, began asking harder questions. Why arrest him 11 years later? If there was real evidence, why wait so long? And if there wasn't, why arrest him at all? Some came to believe Sean was simply the easiest suspect to target, and that maybe the real killer was still out there. The case took a new turn. No longer just the story of a girl who died, but a larger question of who we believe, when we act, and what happens when justice comes too late, or not at all. 11 years. One man arrested, then set free, and all that remains are bones, a lie, and the silence of a town too afraid to ask, who really did this? July 2023, Sean Adkins was released. No trial, no public apology, no declaration of innocence. Just, we can't proceed at this time. The case of Hailey Dunn slipped back into the shadows once again. But this time, the loss didn't just belong to a single family, and it belonged to an entire community. Online forums that had once been certain of Sean's guilt grew quiet. Facebook groups like Justice for Hailey fractured into two camps. One still convinced he was guilty, the other turning suspicion toward Hailey's own mother. People began resurfacing a 2011 clip, Billie Jean saying, "I think she'll come home," her face almost blank. Some rebuilt timelines arguing there was no hard proof Billie was even home that afternoon. A distant relative, who asked not to be named, recalled that Hailey had once confided she was afraid of being left alone with Sean when mom wasn't home. That comment had been dismissed years ago. Now it cut like a reopened wound. Even Clint Dunn, Hailey's father, once the loudest voice against Sean, started to sound shaken. In an interview, he said, "I don't know who to believe anymore. I just know my little girl is dead, and everyone keeps living like it was her fault." The FBI released a detail that had been overlooked. On December 26th, the day before Hailey was reported missing, her phone signal dropped out for 7 hours. No calls, no data, as if it had been forcibly shut off, then switched back on. But December 26th had never been part of the official timeline. If something happened on the 26th, then the entire story everyone had been told rested on a false assumption. And if Texas law enforcement overlooked one day, what else had they overlooked? The last person to speak with Hailey might not have been Sean. It might not have been her mother. It could have been an elderly neighbor whose strange remark to police was brushed aside because she was forgetful. August 2023. After Sean Adkins was freed, public opinion entered a strange haze, as though everyone silently agreed not to speak his name again. No one demanded more investigation. No one pushed the case onto national television. Only the family, or what was left of it, kept living inside a loop of questions no one would answer. In a records review by an independent team of journalists, a forgotten note surfaced. The statement of Mrs. Eva, 72, who lived 2 doors down. It was only 3 lines long. "I remember seeing Hailey ride her bike past my house on the 26th. She looked into my yard, then turned away. She seemed like she was looking for someone." The officer's note below it read, "Mrs. Eva may be mistaken on the date. Disregard. But if Hailey had been outside on the 26th, the real disappearance might not have been the afternoon of the 27th, as her mother and Sean had claimed it all. That would upend 13 years of investigative work. And it raised an even darker question. Had someone built December 27th into the narrative? If so, Hailey may have vanished earlier, in a window of time when no one was paying attention, when everyone still assumed everything was fine. The independent team found another oddity. Hailey's beloved handheld Nintendo game system, her favorite possession, was never listed in any search inventory. It wasn't in her bedroom. It wasn't logged as evidence. No one knows where it went. Some experts believe that if the device still existed, its GPS or play history could show who was holding it on Hailey's last day. But now it's too late. Each detail has slipped into a limbo of not enough to investigate, but too much to ignore. When asked if the case could ever be solved, an investigator who'd worked it since 2011 simply shook his head. "I think if someone knew what happened, they'd have said it by now. And if they haven't, it's not because they're scared. It's because they know nobody's listening." 13 years. A girl vanished. A body found. A suspect arrested and released. And the small, discarded details, once filed under not important, are now all that remain. Today, the house where Hailey once lived stands empty. The windows are sealed shut. Grass grows knee-high in the yard. The rusted address plate leans sideways, as if the house itself no longer wants to remember what happened there. The neighborhood's new children don't know Hailey's name. The adults avoid the topic entirely. Police won't comment. And the media, after a brief flash of attention when Sean was arrested and released, has gone silent again. No one has been held responsible. No one has been charged. No one has ever been publicly named as the killer. All that remains is a little girl, left behind in a field of red dust, barely intact, for years without even a proper headstone. The town where Hailey vanished once had 4,000 residents. Now it's under 3,000. Some left for economic reasons. Others left because, in their words, I couldn't stay in a place where a child could die and nobody gets arrested. In 2025, the case was turned over to the cold case unit of the Texas Rangers. But when asked if there was still hope, investigators gave just one answer. We've never stopped investigating, but time is not on the victim's side. Hailey's father, Clint Dunn, no longer speaks to the media. In his final interview in 2024, he looked straight into the camera and said something that left viewers in tears. If I could say one last thing to Hailey, I'd say I'm sorry. Sorry I wasn't there. Sorry I let you disappear around people who didn't know how to keep you safe. Hailey's story doesn't end with justice. There's no confession, no official villain, no sentencing, just scattered fragments. A forgotten hoodie, a camera that was unplugged, a witness statement only 3 lines long, and silence. But even in that silence, something remains. An image, a question, a pain that refuses to fade. Hailey once wrote, I want to be a teacher, so kids can feel like they matter. Maybe the last thing we can do for her is make sure she isn't forgotten.